This is America. Don't catch you slipping now. Don't catch you slipping now. Look what I'm whipping now.
It was less than 2 months ago that the House Judiciary Subcommittee on the Constitution, Civil Rights, and Civil Liberties held a hearing concerning the topic of reparations for African Americans who were the descendants of those who were enslaved in the past. While this renewed interest in the subject of reparations is by no means isolated, it does present a unique opportunity for both those in the positions of political influence as well as the public to look at all the facets of the conversation. Those in attendance at the subcommittee include celebrated author Ta-Nehisi Coates, who wrote an essay for The Atlantic in 2014 entitled The Case for Reparations. Coates' case spans from the historical origins of slavery and its barbarity, as well as the long lasting effects the institution of slavery has even on many African Americans today. Coates also expresses the sentiment that not much has changed with the opinion of the American public when it comes to reparations. He singles out a quote from the Chicago Tribune published in 1891 in regard to those African Americans who have been freed from slavery. Quote, "They have been taught to labor, they have been taught Christian civilization, and to speak the noble English language instead of some African gibberish. The account is square with the ex-slaves." Unquote. Even today, there are many that believe that African Americans are owed nothing further, due to them supposedly having the same opportunities, benefits, and status in our society as any other. Those against reparations will often quote statistics that illustrate how some minorities have higher average incomes or livelihoods than even white Americans, such as Asian minorities. This argument, however, neglects to recognize the long standing history of atrocity committed against a significant portion of the population of African Americans. Those who were slaves were first captured, then ripped away from their homeland before being shipped to a country foreign to their own. In this new land, they were often removed and separated from their families. Now being sold to white masters, they were viewed as nothing more than property to be done with as their owners chose. Beatings, rape, torture, psychological torture, threats against their family, and a myriad of other cruel tools were used against them as they endured a life of debasement and dehumanization. This institution of slavery affected incalculable people and left long lasting scars upon the African American community, even following their release from enslavement. After their newfound freedom, many had difficulty finding housing that would accommodate them. Compounding that difficulty, they also needed to find work when many white Americans were unwilling to hire them. Even should a job be found, the occupation often paid significantly lower wages than was expected of the position. Later, Jim Crow laws provided significant discrimination against African Americans. As well, during this period of time, there was prevalent use of racist iconography under the guise of both humor and entertainment. The Jim Crow Museum of Racist Memorabilia at Ferris State University puts it as such.
Ask yourself the question, if you grow up and growing up you see literally thousands of examples in cartoons, in movies, in books, and in real life of blacks being the victims of pain, the victims of aggression, and also the perpetuators, what seeds does that plant? What we try to do in the entire museum is to re-emphasize that the pieces in here are caricatures. They are not real people. It's a distortion. It's a lie.
It should come as no surprise that the repercussions from enslavement that lasted 250 years should not be easily erased in only half as much time. Both the nation's society and government contributed to that institution of slavery, and given its monstrous nature, America has a moral and ethical obligation to consider the topic of reparations for African Americans. If we are to do this, then we must begin to look into the practical considerations that are coupled with the conversation in order to determine whether reparations are a feasible goal. There is historical precedent for reparations, even in the United States. The Civil Liberties Act of 1988 was a landmark federal law that provided reparations to Japanese Americans who endured being forced into internment camps during World War II. Not only did this newly enacted law provide fiscal restitution in the form of an estimated $1.6 billion, it also provided redress in the form of the federal government publicly acknowledging its role in the inexcusable treatment of its own citizens and giving a direct apology towards those Japanese Americans affected. Thomas Kramer, professor of public policy at the University of Connecticut, has written two in depth reports concerning reparations. The first, written in 2009, raised three of the most common concerns with reparations, those being who, by whom, and with what. Who refers to asking whether individuals or institutions should receive the fiscal restitution. And if an institution, should it be an independent organization or a state run institution? The question of by whom inquires into whether the source of reparations would be provided by individuals or by a collective. A collective would likely consist of a federal tax increase to all citizens, while the individual option would focus on a specific subset of the American population that would shoulder the burden of the cost. The latter is often thought to be more complicated and certainly controversial. Lastly, with what refers to the form in which reparations would take. It could be a direct monetary compensation, such as in the case with the Japanese Americans, or it could potentially be in the form of a service. Services could be represented as improved healthcare and educational opportunities for those who receive the reparations. Thomas Kramer's second paper dealt more directly with determining the actual economic value that which the American government might potentially owe should reparations come to pass. Kramer went through a complex process of calculation that included things such as potential lost personal income, harm performed on individuals, both physical and mental, and inflation for modern fiscal value, among other factors. Kramer arrived at an estimation of 5.9 to $14.2 trillion. Many might claim that this figure seems extraordinary and be against reparations for that reason. However, if this is truly the reason for such, there should be little issue with having a congressional commission investigating possible solutions to reparations and the important details for the feasibility of such. Despite this, Bill H.R. 40 has never even gotten to the floor of the House of Representatives, despite being introduced every year since 1989. Bill H.R. 40 seeks to create a commission to perform exactly what's wished by many: concrete answers to the important questions involving reparations for African Americans. And this is where all sides of the discussion can come together. Agreement toward a commission that will seek the answer to the details needed can only prove beneficial to all involved, as more information on the subject helps everyone come to a more concrete conclusion.